Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers, hope you've had a great Tuesday. It's been good for me. I've been really busy, so I'm working on a new laptop, which I needed for the Alec Murdaugh trial because Lord knows I don't feel like dragging my big old iMac down there. And so this makes it easy for me to do the podcast. So I'm giving it a test run tonight. I hope everything goes well because I've been frustrated with getting this sound hooked up. Hopefully everything sounds all right for you guys. All right, music fact of the day before we jump in. Fiona Apple. I love the song Criminal. It's just a great song, but it only took her 45 minutes to write it. I thought that was pretty cool. I'll post that for you guys later. All right, Bryan Kohberger. He arrived in court today in Pennsylvania for his extradition hearing. He made eye contact with his family in the courtroom, nodded over to them, and they were sitting in the front row right behind the defense table. His mom was crying a lot. His sister was consoling her, and an officer actually brought his mom tissues. And when the judge told Kohberger he's facing murder charges once he's back in Idaho, his mother kind of collapsed into his sister's arms, and they both very loudly cried, according to people inside. So what happened? Well, he officially waived his extradition to Idaho, signed the waiver right there in court, and the judge explained the charges that are waiting for him when he gets there, and also that he was voluntarily allowing authorities to take him back to Idaho. Arrangements are currently being made to extradite him. They didn't say if it would be private jet or commercial. I've actually I've actually flown commercial with people who are being transported or extradited. They typically have them on the pretty far back row, and a lot of times they'll cover their hands so you don't see the handcuffs, but I've seen several. Maybe a case of this caliber, they may fly him privately, who knows. But Kohberger said he's not on any medication that would affect his decision, and the judge said that there is a 10-day limit in order to get him back to Idaho. It could be as soon as tonight, but yeah, so when he goes there, we'll be able to see that probable cause affidavit after his first hearing. Can't wait to dive in and see what they've got on him. He was wearing handcuffs, but no shackles in court today. And there's been a story floating around online about his behavior at the jail that seems to kind of be debunked. So the warden at the jail said that Kohberger has been a model prisoner and hasn't caused any problems since his arrest. And he's been quiet and followed all directions. So they had a presser after the hearing today. There wasn't a whole lot shared, but we did learn that tactical assets were staged in the county last Thursday. Pennsylvania troopers and their task force were contacted by the FBI to assist with the surveillance of Kohberger. Until then, the authorities had no clue in the area that he was around, that Kohberger was in their area. They were able to get that fugitive from justice warrant and the search warrant for the car and the residence. So early morning Friday, they say he was arrested without incident. His parents were home at the time, and they also had a warrant to get his DNA. So there's not going to be much question now. I'm going to explain how they use ancestral DNA to sometimes nab people here in just a few. There were actually 50 agents on that street when the arrest took place. He had nowhere to go. Multiple doors and windows were broken when they entered the residence by force to arrest him. The home was turned over to the FBI so that they could search it. And one of the officers who spoke at that presser said after reading the affidavit, he thinks the reason Kohberger waived extradition is his need to know what the affidavit says. Kohberger's connection to the scene of the crime is the significance of the affidavit, according to this officer that spoke at the presser. And he said there was ample probable cause. He'll remain at the Monroe County Jail until he's extradited. So we had heard some rumblings that Bryan and his dad had been pulled over a couple of times on the drive from Idaho back to Pennsylvania, and now we have proof they did. So TMZ has posted a video of that traffic stop from Indiana with Kohberger and his dad. That was on December 15th. There was not really much pictures of his face, but here you can see the Hyundai that was confiscated and is the one they've been searching for. His dad mentions to the cop that there was a shooting near Washington State University and said that's where his son went to school. And what had happened was a man was barricaded in an apartment and threatened to shoot his two roommates who were inside also at the time. Police officials say at the time of the stop, they did not know anything related to the license plate or state in which the car was registered. They were let go both times, actually, with a verbal warning. Just minutes before this stop, they were stopped by Hancock County Sheriff's Office and let go. Mainstream media is reporting that there's some suggestion that Kohberger's cell phone was pinging around the victims days before the murders. You know, if this is true, that whole crime of passion or snap defense could be hard pressed for his defense attorneys. You know, and I've been thinking for a while, and a few of you have shared the same view with me. I wonder, since Kaylee and Maddie worked at a vegan restaurant, and we've heard from family members who was a very, very strict vegan, is this maybe where they cross paths? Kind of starting to think maybe that could be the case. Just my 2 cents, you know, I'll throw it in there. But according to Law and Crime, Kohberger originally agreed to talk to investigators after his arrest for between 5 and 15 minutes, but ultimately he requested an attorney. His parents' house, the apartment at Washington State University that he lived in, and his office have all been searched, and it's safe to assume they are all over that Hyundai. I'm sure there's something in there. There has to be. Kohberger and his dad made the drive between December 13th and the 16th, by the way. They did that in an effort to avoid the snowstorm that kind of gripped the nation over the holidays. And a former classmate at DeSales, where he and Kohberger were attending for their understudies, told Law and Crime he recalls Bryan speaking over professors in a superior manner. He also said words can't describe his shock of the arrest and says it's all pretty surreal. He said he's definitely articulate, but stuck on minor details and pointing out flaws in what the professor was saying. Sometimes he made good points. There were times people were like, can you please shut up so we can move on? It's not really relevant. You guys all know we went to school with somebody like that. They said his appearance had changed since undergrad school, saying he looks gaunt at this point and obviously a little older. He said Kohberger was very interested in criminal justice, but did not really attend the extracurricular activities such as the Criminal Justice Club. And there was a criminal justice conference that most other students attended, but he did not. He also said he didn't really socialize with anybody from school outside of the classroom. So his public defender in Pennsylvania said he believes he's going to be exonerated. That's what he believes. Those were his words. He's been very easy to talk to. He's calm in demeanor. And he said Kohberger's biggest concern is for his family. His defense attorney also told KHQ Local that Kohberger has no desire to harm himself. He also says Bryan doesn't dispute he was in Pullman through mid-December. He said Bryan understands the weight of the charges and that the death penalty could be on the table for this. He told his attorney, this will be a long process. Yep, that's putting it mildly. So his attorney, LaBar, has ordered a psychiatric evaluation after learning how Bryan has been acting while in jail. Now, that was something that was disputed by his attorney and also by the jailer, saying that he's been a model inmate. But according to staff at the jail, Bryan has spent most of his time kind of curled in a ball on the floor, facing the wall and not talking much. But when LaBar spoke to KHQ, he said Bryan's mentally aware and thinks he's certainly stable mentally. Well, why are you ordering the evaluation right now? I mean, maybe just to get the ball rolling. It's going to be something that his public defenders in Idaho do anyway. But he believes Bryan will plead not guilty. And both his parents and his sisters plan to be at that hearing. His attorney also relayed what Kohberger's family said to him. They don't believe it to be Bryan. And they can't believe this. This is certainly completely out of character for him, the allegations. And really, they're just trying to be supportive with the understanding that these four families have suffered loss. So they're sympathetic towards that. And that's why it should remain really private. And they don't want to try this case in the court of public opinion. Labar also said Kohberger is easy to talk to, and he said he believes he will be exonerated. His defense attorney has been in contact with the Idaho Public Defense Commission to help find Bryan an attorney before he arrives back in Idaho. And Anjanette Levy tweeted that Idaho actually doesn't have a state public defender system. There's 4 lawyers in a county, and one of those, guess who it is? The coroner in this case. The lady who went to the scene. She won't be able to represent him. Obviously, there's a conflict of interest, and this includes the other lawyer in her office. So there's only 2 in the county who could rep Bryan. I love Thrive Market. I've been able to find brands not widely seen in stores that are much cheaper than other places online. I've been using their Foy CBD relief cream for my knee with amazing results. And this is just one example of the many products you can find to better your life, from foods to beauty to health. As a Thrive Market member, I can save money on every single order. And on average, I save 30%. On my last order, I saved $93. On top of the massive savings on each order, Thrive Market has a deals page that changes every day. It gives me cash back on many brands, and they have a price match guarantee. You can search dietary restriction using filters, and even better, they help a family in need with their 1-for-1 membership matching program. You join, they give. Join Thrive Market today and get 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. Go to thrivemarket.com/whattheworld for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. That's Thrive, THRIVE, market.com/whattheworld, thrivemarket.com/what. One of the best feelings of having glad skin on my podcast is feedback from a friend who's tried everything to help ease their daughter's discomfort from eczema. Using the eczema cream, it's the only thing that's helped her. If you've been living with eczema, acne, or rosacea, you can relate to the frustration of trying many products without any long-term relief. You can expect something different with Glad Skin. Glad Skin specifically works to target the imbalance in your skin's microbiome. And Glad Skin uses Microbalance, a revolutionary protein that restores the balance of the good and bad bacteria that live on your skin so it can finally heal. Is so effective that 91% of users, both adult and children, who tried their top-selling eczema cream reported significant improvement after just 7 days. So if you've been frustrated with your treatment options, don't wait to try Glad Skin. They are offering my listeners 15% off plus free shipping on your first order at gladskin.com/whattheworld. That's gladskin.com/whattheworld for 15% off plus free shipping. gladskin.com/whattheworld. Brian Inton said that Kaylee's dad found out Thursday night from police there would be arrest, and he felt relief and joy. That soon gave way to being overwhelmed, knowing the court process is beginning and they will see him face to face. That has to be so hard, to be in the same room with somebody who is accused of murdering your child. Steve said he will be there looking him in the face to let him know this isn't going away anytime soon. This is just the beginning. He said in looking for connections between Kaylee and the suspect, he didn't think he got to know her well, because if he did, it would be impossible to hurt her. They feel this is someone who didn't have a chance to meet or talk to her because she was a very likable person and she didn't have a mean bone in her body. Unfortunately, crazy people don't care about any of that. And you can be the nicest person in the world, and if somebody's eyed you as a victim, you better cross your fingers, because there's very little you can do other than defend yourself when somebody has their sights set that you're going to be their victim. He said there's a little comfort in knowing this isn't someone that she knew and trusted. When asked about how he felt with Bryan getting his PhD in criminology, he said he was into this kind of thing and had made a lifetime commitment to wrap himself into crime, solving crimes, and figuring out how people got caught, and a little overconfident and didn't think there's no perfect way to commit a crime. Kaylee's dad, Steve, was also on Good Morning America today and said it felt like a cloud was lifted when they heard of the arrest. It was like seeing sunlight after being stuck in a house for a month. It provided relief and comfort to know that things were progressing and that all this torture and waiting had a purpose and a meaning. And I've reported on this before, but it's believed his DNA was matched through genetic genealogy. So CC Moore, who is the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon and founder of DNA Detectives, who has helped law enforcement solve more than 240 crimes, by the way. How does all this work? So they find a sample at the crime scene. And then we know at least one of the victims put up a fight. So one way they could have found his DNA if he didn't bleed is epithelial cells underneath the fingernails of somebody who might have fought back. His blood, if he cut himself, could have been mixed in with the other victims. There's hair. There's all kinds of ways, obviously, you can get DNA. But once DNA is found at the crime scene, the police run it through the CODIS database to see if the DNA belongs to someone who has previously been arrested. But we know Bryan has not. The test uses the sample against 20 DNA markers looking for the perpetrator or even a relative who might have been in trouble before and you have not. But genetic genealogy testing, since it has become so popular, it can search through 1 million markers, which makes the possibilities of a hit higher. And that could be a distant relative to help kind of narrow down their search. Now, there's only a few databases of that ancestral DNA that they allow police to use, and that's GED Match and Family Tree DNA. Between them, they have about 2 million samples that can be tested against. So CC Moore said the match likely came from a second, third, or fourth cousin, and it's rare to get a match from a parent or a sibling in that way. A lot of times they find the match has never even met their distant relative, but they connect. DNA is a trip, y'all. It's crazy. He said, you're looking for patterns and things in common, and you need to find that one person who is related to all of the people at the top of that list. Before we find out who they are, we need to find out what all the other people on the list have in common and who they have in common. Then you work forward from that and build out that family tree. If the genetic trail kind of is a dead end, there are other ways to try to find the suspect. So when they get a match in GED Match or Family Tree DNA, the vast majority of the time, there's just a little bit of information there. They have to figure out who is this person, who are their grandparents. And then when they're building forward in time, it's really hard work, as you could imagine. He also says once you get past the 1950 census in the U.S., there aren't any more records. So we have to start using newspaper articles, birth records, and state databases. And you can learn a lot from social media as well. So once they narrow it down to, like, say, grandparents, you've got to say who are their grandchildren, who's living in the right place at the right time, who's the right age. From their DNA, they can predict skin color, hair color, eye color. I've seen that in unidentified body cases online where they can reconstruct a face mainly based on the DNA. And it can be eerily similar once you find out who this person is, or there's been a lot of just forensic shows on that very topic. So in this case, it's possible they didn't have enough to get all the way to his immediate family. Then they got to his grandparents and had to look at all the male descendants from that line. As you come closer and closer to the present day, it becomes harder. In the US, we have search databases, basically these companies that collect information on all of us and compile it. And what do? They sell access to these databases. So like White Pages or Been Verified or US Search, you can put their name in and see who they're connected to. And it's really difficult and time intensive. In the UK, it would be extremely difficult and impossible sometimes because of their privacy restrictions. In Canada, it's extremely difficult for the same reason. He said, in a way, we're fortunate, but on the other hand, if someone is worried about privacy, they should really be thinking about those databases and not the DNA websites. Your DNA is meaningless if I can't build the family tree. Once you get a hit and have leads, you go from there looking at the male descendants and start to investigate things such as who drives a white Hyundai. That would have been the aha moment, coupled with the close proximity of where he lives in relation to where the crimes were committed. So, what happens once a suspect is identified through genealogy? They turn their information over to police. And undercover teams will trail sometimes the potential suspect and try to get a DNA sample to compare it to that DNA found at a crime scene. The genealogy itself is not enough to make an arrest, and the genealogist will write a report telling how they came to that conclusion, and then it's up to law enforcement to investigate that further. We know Kohberger was followed for 4 days by the FBI. I bet somehow they got some kind of a sample from like a cup or a napkin, a licked envelope. You can get a DNA sample from that. They can also go through your garbage once it's put on the road. Is that legal? Yes. A U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1988, California versus Greenwood, found that garbage was public domain when it's left on the outside curb of a home or a property, meaning those placing trash cans by the curb have no reasonable expectation of privacy. So the tip line, 208-883-7180, email tipline@ci.moscow.id.us if anybody knows somebody that knows Bryan Kohberger. All right, that's it for tonight, guys. Tomorrow I got some Petito lawsuit updates as well as some Josh Duggar updates. Until then, we'll see you soon.